Now, how is WFP addressing the growing needs of Congolese civilians despite this funding gap?
We call it extreme prioritization. So when you have more than 6 million people now who've been displaced by the conflict, and that's probably one of the largest displacement crises in the world, and it's not a badge of honor, it's not a badge that anybody wants to be proud of. But we have no choice but to prioritize assistance. So we're providing full rations to the worst affected people for the next 6 months, rather than spreading ourselves too thinly so that no one is not adequately served. And as you mentioned, there is a sort of $1 million tag in terms of what we need to provide food and nutrition to 1.5 million in the East, and that's 397 million. And it's tough when you've got other crises, when you've got Sudan on our doorstep, South Sudan, Yemen, Gaza, Ukraine. It's a really tough time for donors and for the humanitarian agencies and for the people that we need to reach.
Shelley, eastern part of DRC, we know, has been plagued with the militia groups that have killed and displaced a lot of civilians there. But what percentage of civilians in dire need is WFP able to reach?
So WFP is the largest humanitarian agency on the ground, and when we have the logistics, the air capacity, the trucks to get to people, but it's access. Access is always really hard in conflict. Access so that we can negotiate to get food to people, and especially children who are the most vulnerable. And as I mentioned, this is also a country which is resource rich. You've got land that is very fertile. So when you do have conflicts and people are forced to leave their land, it's really hard, because you are basically forcing them into a situation where they're living in very makeshift camps with very little shelter, with very little protection. So, the numbers that we know we want to reach in 2024 is over 3 million. We managed to reach 3.4 in 2023. But again, it's really just about, can we overcome the access issues and the other challenges, poor infrastructure, poor roads, and also climate change.
Shelley, what would be the implications if humanitarian organizations such as yours do not get enough funding?
I think the answer is very simple. I mean, people will have to go without, very essential food. I mean, everybody has the right to food, has the right to be able to have access to food, and especially in a country which I mentioned is abundant. It's rich and abundant in natural resources, and yet 20% of the population in this country is facing hunger. So it really is, it feels like a resource curse in this country, where the demand for the country's natural resources such as cobalt, gold, copper is high worldwide. The way we're talking to each other today is probably because of resources from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, but the wealth doesn't trickle down to the poorest.